If you have topics you would like to have us discuss on the Aging Well podcast, please click on the links in the episode description to send us a text or record your message or comments. We'd love to hear from you and how we can help you age well. If you benefit from the Aging Well podcast and would like to support the content financially, please click on the Support the Show link or support our affiliates and advertisers. Welcome to the Aging Well podcast. I'm Jeff Armstrong here with Corbin Bruton. In this and the episodes that follow, we will share candid discussions on aging and hear from the experts. We are here to inform and encourage as we experience, aging. I'm solo in this episode. I thought I would use this as a chance to discuss a couple questions I often hear about fitness training. One is, how do you find a good trainer? The other is, how do you spot snake oil and charlatans in fitness? Both are excellent questions and warrant consideration. In episode 49, my guests were Candace White and her personal fitness client, Sue. Sue shared that I had referred her to Candace. I am thankful that they were a good fit. Candace is a former student, so I knew her knowledge base and her personality and knew she would match very well with Sue and Sue's needs. Sometimes good trainers don't match the personalities of their clients and vice versa. I've had this happen to myself many times as a trainer over the years, but sometimes trainers have wonderful personalities but lack the necessary knowledge, especially when their clients have unique needs. So there are many qualities that I look for in a trainer. First of all is education, and that's part of the reason why I am in education is I feel like I'm probably a better educator than I am trainer, and I'd like to give that knowledge to my students, but moreover, I don't necessarily want them to have knowledge, but the capacity to build on that knowledge, because with a good foundation of physiology and understanding, they can adapt that knowledge to the unique needs of their clients. And so it's important that they're capable of thinking complexly, to thinking critically. And one of the reasons why I push so hard in our curriculum to have a pathophysiology and exercise course is because I feel that the better we understand pathophysiology, the better we're capable of dealing with any individual who might come to us. And the basics of exercise are pretty simple. We talk about the principle of specificity, the principle of overload and progression, principle of reversibility, and so on. All of these are important principles, as are the principles of periodization, strength versus endurance, cardiorespiratory endurance versus muscle endurance, the health-related components of fitness, cardiorespiratory endurance, muscle strength, flexibility, and body composition, as well as the neuromotor skill-related components of fitness, power, speed, agility, balance, coordination, reaction time. These are all things that are important to understand what they are and how they function and how we train for those. But how we approach each individual is going to be a little bit different. And we can't have cookie cutter types of training for individuals. Everybody is an individual. That's one of the principles of adaptation is individuality. Everybody's a little bit different. So they're going to need special attention. And so that's one of the biggest qualities I think of a trainer is somebody who is going to be matched well with you. Do they work well for you and with you? And do you work well with them? Do you like them? Do you feel like you are making the progress that you need to make with them? There are many things that trainers are not. Trainers are not individuals with great bodies necessarily. I mean, they may be very fit and that may demonstrate that they have some knowledge base, but you got to be careful that just because somebody has a great body doesn't mean they know what they're doing in the gym. They may just have chosen their parents wisely and have always been fit. I know a lot of trainers that have really great bodies and look really strong and built and everything, but they don't know squat in a gym. And there are others who maybe look a little less fit and can be great trainers. The other day, my wife showed me she was traveling and did a Peloton training, bike training thing at the hotel that she was at. And she showed me a picture of the trainer, and the trainer was a bit overweight. And she was like commenting that the woman looked out of shape. And I said, you don't know her story. She may have been really, really out of shape and had gotten to this point because she knows what the heck she's doing. I probably would not be in fitness were it not for a gentleman by the name of Biz Stark. Biz Stark, when I was in high school, owned Steel City Nautilus in Pittsburgh and taught me so much about strength and muscle physiology and some of the basics of training that really sparked my interest in learning more and hopefully becoming a better trainer. Biz Stark, if you looked at him, did not look like the picture of fitness. He was, dare I say, morbidly obese. He had health issues. He was not a person who was overweight because he didn't do the right things. He had glandular issues and things like that. And I don't know his whole medical history, but he was one of the best trainers I've ever encountered. He knew his stuff. He worked back in that day with the University of Pittsburgh's strength and conditioning program. And that was in the day when Pitt was really, really good, the Tony Dorsett days and all that. Unfortunately, I think they're good again. They beat my Mountaineers in the backyard brawl this season, but that's not here or there. So, but again, he was not somebody that you'd look at and say, oh, he's got to be a great trainer, but he was. And I've come across other people in gyms that it's like, dude, you don't know what you're talking about. And in other cases, there are people who may have good programming, but they don't really understand what they're doing. One of the things that I expect of my students is I don't care what your philosophy of training is, what type of training you prefer, but you better be able to back it up physiologically. If you can make an argument to me that this works because of this physiological reason, and I have no counter to it, then chances are it's going to be somewhat effective. It may not be the most effective. There are many ways to approach fitness, and no one way is the best. There are some ways that are better than others regarding the goals, but the individual who is training you should be considering that. The trainers are not necessarily good because they do cool stuff on Instagram. Instagram has become a popular way of trainers kind of marketing themselves, and you often see them doing all kind of crazy, cool stuff. Some of it's good, some of it's bad, but just because they're doing the cool stuff doesn't mean they know what they're doing. And we preach on this podcast a lot, the basic 5 plus the carries, just basic exercises and the variations of those. And the variations don't have to be very complex. We focus on the basic movement patterns. So a squat, a hinge pattern, horizontal push, horizontal pull, vertical push, vertical pull, and again, the carries. So those basic movement patterns, whether they're done single leg, double leg, free weights, machines, on Basu balls or other kind of crazy things, you have to look at it. Am I doing this for a specific purpose and goal? And is it accomplishing that specific purpose and goal? And just because it looks cool and fancy does not mean it's any more effective than some of the boring stuff. And unfortunately, exercise is a bit boring. And that's one of the reasons why it is hard for people to stick to a program. But a good program does not have to be flashy. Another reason that trainers are not necessarily good trainers just because is because they are former athletes. Just because somebody has had a high level of success in sport does not mean that they can translate that to being able to benefit you on your fitness journey. They may know a little bit more because they've experienced more, but unfortunately, a lot of trained athletes have been trained by poor trainers themselves. And maybe it could be better athletes had they had better coaches along the way. But former athletes are former athletes because they were successful in their sport. So they had some predisposition to being good in that sport. And when I'm looking for trainers, I'm looking for, hey, what has this person accomplished themselves? Or what have their clients been able to accomplish? Another thing that does not necessarily mean that the trainer is good is just because they train professional athletes. A lot of times you'll hear trainers that will give the list of collegiate or professional athletes that they work with. Well, they didn't necessarily get that athlete to the point they're at. And it's pretty easy to train people who are already well trained and who have chosen their parents wisely. What I like to see is a trainer that can take somebody who really struggles at basic motor skills or struggles with their weight, struggles to add muscle mass or improve their cardiorespiratory condition, and improves them significantly. Or somebody who, like Candace, who can take somebody who is looking to get in a little bit better shape, has never lifted before in their life, and is preparing for a major surgery like donating a kidney like Sue did, and can do that effectively and get that person so engaged in the exercise that now they want to consider becoming a power lifter, and they've recovered well from that surgery. Those are the good trainers. Again, just because you train somebody who is already successful does not make you successful. It just means that you're able to kind of ride their shirt tails and use them in your marketing. So I would be very, very careful and cautious about looking at the credentials of the trainer that you are considering. Yes, there are a lot of former athletes that work with professional athletes that are fantastic trainers, but look beyond just the marketing. Look for what is their knowledge base. To what extent can they meet your needs as an individual? And how are they going to adapt their program? If they have a cookie cutter program, that's not necessarily going to be the best for you. If you go into a gym and everybody's doing the same thing, we see this a lot in youth sports performance training, that everybody comes in and there's a whiteboard with a workout and everybody's doing that same workout. Now, I understand that oftentimes that is necessary, particularly when we're training teams, and you cannot give perfect individualized attention to every athlete. But there has to be some flexibility, some wiggle room in there. There has to be some understanding that not everybody is at the same level of progression or of motor development. And so if they're just doing something cookie cutter, they're probably not necessarily going to be the best trainer. Other things to kind of consider is, how do you like this individual? Do you get a good feeling of comfort with them? I think also you have to look at safety. This is probably a bit more when we're dealing with youth athletes. If you're going to drop off your daughter or son to train with a particular trainer, are they protected? Are they going to be one-on-one alone with a trainer? That could be a cause for a little bit of concern. Other things to kind of consider is, I discussed my epigenetics test with True Diagnostic co-founder Hannah Wendt in episode 162. Epigenetic testing measures baseline and changes in your pace of aging, giving you the power to steer your anti-aging or health and wellness journey in the right direction. I learned that I am aging well. Click on the affiliate link in the episode description, use the promo code AGEWELL, and receive a 12% discount on your epigenetics test and monitor your pace of aging. Where are you training? Do they have the facilities necessary for your needs, or can they adapt your needs to the facility that is available? I've yet to find a gym that is perfect for every individual, but there's always ways of modifying the current existing environment to be able to meet the individual's needs. And are they capable of doing that? Particularly as we age, and we're talking on this podcast much more about the aging population, although, as we've mentioned numerous times, we believe that aging well begins at birth and quite likely before birth, at least in the womb, if not going back generations to the things that your grandparents and your parents have done as they are maturing and kind of preparing their genetics to be passed on. So we'll probably talk a little bit more in another episode about epigenetics to extent, but something to consider is that everybody is different. Everybody responds differently to the exercise. We have non-responders, we have responders. Are they capable of modifying the program to meet your responsiveness to the exercise? Can they modify the equipment that you can't use? So if you have, particularly again, as I'm talking about the aging population, we have certain comorbidities that might creep up. We have certain aches and pains, injuries, or lack of development. Maybe we haven't been exercising for a significant period of time. And so there's things that we can and cannot do. Can the trainer modify their current regular programming to meet your individual needs? Or are they going to do everything cookie cutter? We see a lot in fitness where kind of a big trend that I see in the fitness industry is training people like athletes. It's kind of this notion that if you're doing athletic type training, that is better and it's going to promote better fitness and everything else. Well, the reality is many of us don't consider when we talk about training like athletes is athletes beat the crap out of their bodies in order to perform. They are pushing themselves to a level that is beyond normal. They're trying to exceed the normal physiological capabilities that many of us don't even come close to being able to hit. And so that puts a lot of wear and tear on the body. And if we're training that way constantly over time, we're beating up our bodies the same way an athlete does. But we probably don't have the genetics necessary to be able to manage that, for one thing. But also what we don't consider is that many athletes, once they retire from their sport, are so beat up that they can't continue to train the same way. They have to alter their training. And so the individuals that we consider as our trainers or the individuals that are going to give us information on fitness, it should be based on, are they knowledgeable? Do they understand the basic physiology behind what they are attempting to do? Do they have the personality necessary to motivate you and to encourage you and to drive you to do a little bit more and to want to do a little bit more? Do they have the capacity to alter their programming in order to meet your needs? Do they have a programming in place? Or are they simply, today we're going to try this exercise, we're going to try that exercise, always varying things up, never really doing anything with any purpose? Exercise should be purposeful. We should consider what is referred to as periodization, meaning that we are cycling our training throughout the training periods in order to optimize adaptation. So there may be periods where we're focusing on high repetitions and volume in order to promote more hypertrophy. Other periods where we're going more intensely, but with a smaller volume in order to promote more strength gains. Are they considering working in neuromotor training in that? Are we looking at varying the tempo of the exercise that we're doing so that we are developing speed and power, more explosiveness, even though many of us think that, well, we don't need explosiveness as we age. Well, yes, we do. You want to be able to alter your direction quickly or move quickly when called upon so that we can prevent falls and that we can age well. So there are many qualities of trainers that I think are important. There are many that I think are less important. And again, the biggest of those being, does the trainer look good? I honestly don't care how the trainer looks as long as they can effectively train me and know what they're doing, because I, again, don't know their journey, how much effort they have to put in to have the body that they have. There are many trainers that were just naturally born. They picked their parents wisely, and they just, no matter what they do, they're going to have a fit-looking body. Go back and look at one of my earlier episodes when I interviewed Sandy Griffin. She's one trainer that I would highly recommend anybody that's in the Colorado Springs area. She had quite the fitness journey to get from mother who was overweight, approaching hypertension, and having some health issues to moving toward the professional bodybuilding circuit. I've had other trainers on here that have been former students of mine. Tiffany Garcia works with an older population at the Dallas retirement community. Alex Whitaker, he works more with pure strength. He's a former strength athlete, strongman athlete. And you look at Alex, he could show you pictures when he was in high school. He was a pudgy little guy who really has worked hard and knows his stuff. Probably the list goes on. We had Chris Hendren, who I would recommend. I really don't know Chris personally so much other than from our few discussions. But from her knowledge base, the experience she has with her clients and how she promotes fitness, again, she fits a different niche than, say, an Alex Whitaker does. And I have a whole list of former students that I would refer people to because I know them and if I can match them with their personalities. It comes to strength and conditioning with, young athletes, I'm not going to send somebody's child to somebody who I would not expect to treat them well and develop them as an athlete. And I'm not looking for somebody who their primary credentials are that they're a former professional athlete at some high level university or played in the NFL. I'm looking at, do they have the knowledge base to be able to develop an athlete? And one of the popular YouTube stations that I'll refer to often on here is Garage Strength. I've been watching a lot of their videos because he does a lot of good stuff with wrestling and has worked with high-level athletes like heavyweight Nick Gradowski. I like his stuff, and he works with high-level athletes, but he also emphasizes that they work with athletes who are developing, and that's the primary focus. And so keep all that in mind as you're looking for a trainer. Don't just go for the one that kind of looks the best or has the best Instagram account. And that kind of brings us to the second question. And I recently watched a video on YouTube by strength coach Alexander Bromley. And he's another one that I like a lot of his stuff. Probably everything he does doesn't necessarily match with the Aging Well podcast because he does work more with strength athletes and power lifters and the like. But he did a video titled 3 Ways to Spot a Charlatan. And I'll put the link in the episode description so that anybody can watch that. And in the video, he discusses 3 key points. The first one is that the charlatan will emphasize the complex over the simple. The second is when we see people who are misrepresenting their methods and their results. In other words, just really showing us the good outcomes versus the just kind of more average outcomes. And then the third point is, do they emphasize marketing versus teaching? He goes into these points in his own unique way. And I want to just reiterate his approach. He was more specifically discussing another popular fitness influencer, but I think his points are very valid. And so I'd like to kind of provide my twist on these and my thoughts on how to spot a charlatan in fitness. So first, kind of beginning with the complex over the simple. Again, on Instagram and YouTube, and you'll see all these videos of people doing these very bizarre exercises, much beyond what we talk about with the basic 5. I'm doing on Basu balls, and this particular influencer he was talking about does a lot of unstable type of exercises and weird additions to the exercise that in some cases they are valid and useful, but not always spot on. And I'm really of a mindset of keep it simple, stupid. The old KISS principle that basic programming done well, learning technique, progressing based on the physiological responses is the way to go. And so having and emphasizing very complex kind of programming has its place, but if that's how they're emphasizing it, kind of a flag of caution should come up that are they just trying to make it look so complicated and so complex that that's why you have to come to me, is because you don't understand or nobody can understand this best way of doing exercise except me. And so I'm the only one you can really get the information from. A good trainer is more than likely going to put themselves out of business, or at least eventually lose you as a client because you don't need them anymore. They teach you everything and you should be able to kind of move on and go on. If they trap you into a program that you can't possibly do on your own, the red flag should go up on that a little bit more. It doesn't mean they're not necessarily good. It just maybe means that they don't necessarily have your best interest in mind. They're more interested in kind of making the money off of you. So the idea of being complex over simple, obviously, we're not talking about the complexity of the movements per se. I believe more in complex movements such as the squat, the deadlift, the bench press over more isolated, simple exercises where it's one joint rather than multiple joint type of movements. But that's not what we're talking about with complex over simple. We're talking about kind of the level to which they put this unnecessary complexity into the training, the program, and the movements that make it difficult for the individual to really kind of do the exercise on their own, or that they're using that complexity to kind of market themselves as having special knowledge in fitness that maybe others don't have. And that brings us also then to misrepresenting methods and results. Oftentimes, they're showing on Instagram or on YouTube their best results. When they show their best athletes performing the movements, or they're showing themselves working with a professional athlete, and you're to presume that everybody that they train moves to that level. Well, that's bull. It doesn't happen. I can think of Corey Gilday, one of my friends who has a sports performance training facility in Vancouver, Washington. He posts a lot of he works with a lot of young athletes and posts them on social media. He's kind of sharing how well his student athletes are doing. And a lot of them are kids that are in their earliest stages of development, just learning basic movements. And to me, that shows me much more. When you see a kid who's in his early teens mastering a hang clean, that to me is more impressive and more reflective of the capability of that trainer than showing me somebody who's a 7-year veteran in the NFL hang cleaning a large amount of weight. You're not showing me that that NFL guy is in that point because of your training. You're just showing me that this person has that level of skill and ability and just happens to be going to your gym. So keep that in mind. What are they marketing in their result, and do they misrepresent their methods? This individual that Alexander Bromley was referring to he claims that about 20, what he puts on Instagram is about 20% of the kind of training that he does, and he doesn't put the other 80% on there. But nobody sees that. Nobody knows that unless you really dive into it. And so look carefully at what are the results that they're getting, what are their methods that they're doing, and does it meet your needs and the adequate physiological parameters that are necessary for fitness. Then the third point, marketing versus teaching. This is probably one of my biggest pet peeves in the fitness industry. And part of it is it's become competitive, and obviously people need to market themselves in a way that they're going to draw clients. And the sexy sells, unsexy doesn't. And we got to show ourselves to have something unique in order to attract people. And I think that's a sad state of the fitness industry, is that marketing has taken over effective training and results. And so another way to spot a charlatan is, are they focused more on marketing their brand and what they're doing, showing you their best results, showing their odd, creative types of training, things that separate them from other trainers? Or are they showing you and teaching you how to do the exercise effectively and properly? Because a good trainer is somebody who can teach you. There's an old saying, those who can do, those who can't teach. And there's maybe some truth to that. Some of the best strength coaches are not the strongest people, but they understand the basic mechanics, they understand how to teach it to you, and they can make you stronger and progress you in your fitness goals. And so, again, same thing with aging well. You want somebody that's going to teach you how to do the movements, understands the basic physiology. Lastly, I want to talk about snake oil. By snake oil, I mean diets, supplements, and other hacks that promise fast or better results, and go on with that. I had an opportunity years ago to do a study for a then popular weight loss supplement. And I'm not a big fan of using any kind of supplementation other than what I consider the most important supplements would be obviously water, hydration, carbohydrate to fuel the muscle. I think whey and casein protein are two supplements that can benefit even the elderly as we attempt to offset loss of muscle mass as we age. And Creatine. Creatine is another one that has been well demonstrated in the literature to be both safe and effective for improving strength, improving muscle mass, and so on. Weight loss supplements, I am not a fan of at all. But in this particular situation, I took the opportunity to do the research. We were looking at supplementation with this product in morbidly obese individuals who were exercising on a regular basis. And so we had two groups. We gave one group a placebo, the other group the supplement, and had them doing the same exercise. And in the end, we really didn't see any difference between the two. Nothing that was hugely significant. But the company wanted me to report that there was something like 750 times greater fat loss in the supplement group versus the placebo group. And that was true. And I wouldn't have been wrong in saying that, but it wasn't scientific in reporting it that way. And I refused to report it that way because if you take 750% of a very, very small number, it's still a small number. And it was misrepresenting the results. And it went back and forth, and I was threatened with a lawsuit, and I held my ground. And eventually there was a lawsuit against the company. There was actually several lawsuits, and I was subpoenaed twice. The first one, it was squashed, so I didn't have to testify. The second one, I testified, and it was a big deal, lawsuit, and the company lost. And it turned out that of I think it was 7 studies that were done on the product, ours was the only one that did not either fabricate outright or fabricate data or design the study to get favorable results. And so I felt pretty good in that, but I also learned a lesson there that many of the advertisements that we see in supplements and in these different products that are promoted to improve fitness, many of them are misrepresenting the results or may not even have results to begin with. And you got to be careful when a product promises this percentage better results, because again, those percentage numbers, if they're comparing to a very small number, it's still a small number. And it might look good. Hey, 1,000 times greater fat loss in this particular product. Well, yeah, but if you're not losing anything with the other means, 1,000 times nothing is still nothing. And so be very, very careful with that. And a couple other red flags that come up for me as I look at some of what I would consider snake oils is when you see the phrase clinically proven. Clinically proven. First of all, I learned early on in grad school that nothing is proven. When we look at statistics are looking at probabilities that differences that occur are real differences. And we never have 100% expectations. Probabilities are never 0%, or probabilities are never 100%. They're always maybe close to 100%, but nothing is absolutely proven because you can have another study that's designed a little bit differently that has completely different results. And so when I see clinically proven, it puts up a red flag for me because that proven is supposed to kind of grab you and say, okay, well, this is really good stuff. And sometimes that clinical testing was done by the company and they had their own results. And so look carefully when you see that. Sometimes if I hear a creatine product saying it's clinically proven to improve muscle strength, I'd be a little bit more lenient on that because although it's not necessarily proven, there's pretty strong evidence that it is effective. And so approach with caution when you see clinically proven. And another one is clinically tested. Now, when I say clinically tested, it's like, that's a huge red flag because, okay, it's been tested, but what are the results? They don't tell you the results. I could test something, do 100 of tests on something that all come out negative and not report the results, but say it was clinically tested and you're expected to believe, oh, okay, then it must be good. Well, probably not. And the reality is most supplements are not going to be as effective as they are marketed to. A lot of the hacks that we see that promise faster, better results are going to be the same thing. There is no shortcut to fitness, and we have yet to discover the magic pill that is going to make us fit. And then diets, there's so many different diets out there. Ultimately, it's going to come down to what is most effective for you. And we've talked diet a few times on this podcast, and we'll probably talk more on it. We've kind of touched on wanting to maybe explore like the keto diet a little bit more and some of those. But no diet is going to be the most effective. It's effective for you and it may work. There are certain benefits of one diet versus another. But when it really comes down to losing weight based on your diet, it's going to be, is that diet hypocaloric, meaning that the calories in are less than the calories out? Is it eucaloric, meaning there's caloric balance, which means you're going to not lose weight, you're maintaining your weight? Or is it hypercaloric, where the calories in are greater than the calories out? And if that's the case, you're going to be gaining weight in that situation. But if your goals are to lose weight, any diet that puts you in a state of caloric deficit is going to cause you to lose weight. If you are wanting to gain weight, particularly muscle mass, ideally muscle mass, you need to be in a hypercaloric state. Your muscle will respond best when it's getting excessive calories, so that those calories can go into building the muscle and fueling the muscle contraction. But other than that, there's not a lot of evidence that any one diet is significantly greater in a practical sense than other diets. And so if something works for you, then it works for you. I hope today's episode has helped. There's probably so much more that we can talk about. And I know we touch on oftentimes some of our thoughts on these situations, like picking a trainer or what is good evidence, what is bad evidence. But be cautious in how you select your trainer. And don't feel tied to a particular trainer. If it's not being effective for you, if it's not something that you're as comfortable with, feel free to change trainers. And likewise, if you're a trainer and you have clients that you just don't feel as effective with, there's nothing wrong with saying, I'm probably not a good match for you. Let me find you a better trainer. That kind of approach, I think, ultimately both shows greater integrity, but it's also going to ultimately bring you more clients because you're trustworthy. People are going to respect that, and they're going to refer their friends to you. You may not have been the best trainer for them, but they may have a friend that, hey, I think you would work very well with this individual. And when it comes to looking at YouTube and Instagram, just be cautious of who you're listening to and who you're getting advice from. If they can't back it up with good, solid physiological science and methodology, then they're probably just marketing their product. It may or not, that one video may or may not be anything bad. It may be effective, may not be effective, but when they're constantly presenting all of these fantastic results and not showing you the other nuts and bolts of what they do, it should be a little bit of a red flag for you. So I hope this has helped, and I hope that you will find your path to aging well. Thank you for listening. I hope you benefited from today's podcast, and until next time, keep aging well.